everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to today's webinar, Flexible Working Requests, a Case Study and the Law. My name is Kieran and I am your organiser for today. I'll be supporting today's presenter Vicky by helping behind the scenes and talking you through some of the questions we are receiving.
Thanks, Kieran. So hello everyone, my name is Vicky and I'm your presenter for today's webinar. So before we get started, just a little bit about who Acas are and what we do. We provide employees and employers with free, impartial advice on workplace rights, rules and good practice. We also offer training and we'll let you know about any relevant training courses for today's topic a little later, including how to book. We help resolve disputes. Our online advice is updated regularly, where you can find the latest information on flexible working, along with wider workplace advice for employers and employees. Our website has a number of free template letters, forms and policies for employers, HR managers and employees, which are free to download and use. And Kieran will share a link in the chat to our website. So now let's look at what our webinar will focus on today. To briefly run through the agenda, we will be covering an overview of flexible working, including examples of flexible working, the Acas Code of Practice, flexible working in action with a case study, the Flexible Working Amendment Regulations 2023, and further support available. So to start today's presentation, I'd like to put forward a question. So according to the 2023 survey by CIPD, what percentage of workers view a flexible working pattern as important when considering a new role? I'll give you a moment to think about that before I move on. You could write your answer down and we will come back to this at the end of the webinar. Flexible working describes a change to when, where or how an employee works that suits an employee's needs as well as those of the employer. More and more employers are introducing flexible working practices to recruit and retain the best talent. According to research by CIPD, 65% of UK businesses currently offer flexible working in some form to their frontline workers. In this section, we will look at the different types of flexible working and the benefits it can have on the employer as well as the employee. So flexible working describes a type of working arrangement which involves an employer and an employee agreeing a change to how long, where, when and at what times employees work. Flexible working practices include working part-time, which is work is generally considered part-time when employees are contracted to work anything less than full-time hours. Working compressed hours, where employees work their usual full-time hours but in fewer days, for example, compressing a 5-day week into a 4-day week by working longer hours. Remote or home-based working, working from one's home or another space rather than from the workplace. This could be on a permanent basis or a mix of workplace and home working, usually called hybrid working. Flexi-time, which allows flexibility of when someone starts and finishes work within agreed limits. Annualised hours, working a certain number of hours over the year with different hours on different days and weeks. Working term time. This is where a person does not work during school holidays and it's usually for childcare purposes. This isn't an exhaustive list, but gives you examples of different flexible working arrangements, some of which your place of work might currently have in place for some employees and will already be familiar to you. Flexible working arrangements can be agreed formally or informally. For example, working from home could be offered informally through an agreement with an employee's line manager, but also could be as a result of a formal agreement such as a reasonable adjustment request. So let's look at the different benefits flexible working can have for the employer and its employees. First, we'll consider how implementing flexible working practices in the workplace can benefit the organisation. Aside from the fact that it keeps employers compliant with flexible working regulations, flexible working can benefit business needs and demands. So for example, Amazon recently introduced term time working, where employees can take paid or unpaid leave during school holidays. This was after determining that busier periods of the business coincided with school attendance. It can attract a more diverse workforce and retain staff. Flexible working can help parents return to work, reduce the gender pay gap, support people with fluctuating health conditions to stay in work, and help carers balance their work and caring responsibilities. Businesses can see increased productivity and more motivated staff. The CIPD survey reported flexible and hybrid working practices in 2023, stated 54% of employers are increasing uptake on flexible working to support staff motivation and productivity. And it can also help employers to fill roles that are difficult to recruit for. The CIPD 2023 report says that 71% of candidates thinking about a new role feel that being able to have a flexible working pattern is important. Businesses who have adopted a more flexible approach may find they have a greater number of better quality applicants. So now let's take a look at some of the reasons an employee may want flexible working arrangements. A job with flexibility can allow employees to prioritise their personal needs while still performing well at work. Employees will also save time and money by not commuting to work every day, which can improve work-life balance too. Working from home, working fewer hours, or utilising flexi time can be hugely beneficial for employees with disabilities and long-term health conditions. This also means employers could have access to a wider talent pool if employee geographical location is not a concern. Allowing employees to work flexibly can reduce the risk of burnout and allow employees to have more control over the way in which they work. The Acas Guide on Flexible Working and Work-Life Balance found that flexible working can help to improve the health and well-being of employees and by extension reduce absenteeism, increase productivity and enhance employee engagement and loyalty. Kieran will send you a link to this Acas Guide in the chat box now. So now we've discussed an overview, let's move on to the Acas Code of Practice for Flexible Working, which covers the statutory request process for employees and employers. So in the next few slides, we will be looking at the Acas Code of Practice on handling and responding to flexible working requests. The Acas Code of Practice provides guidance about what must be done as a legal requirement and what should be done as good practice when it comes to handling a flexible working request. The code took effect from the 6th of April 2024. Please see links in your handout for more information. So let's explore a bit more about the Acas Code. Flexible working requests should be handled under the current legislation and in line with the Acas Code. If a flexible working request case reaches an employment tribunal, judges will take into consideration whether you have followed the Acas Code of Practice or not. The purpose of the code is to provide a clear explanation of the law on the statutory right to request flexible working, alongside good practice advice, including how a request is made, how and when consultation and further conversations must and should take place, how a request should be considered by the employer, including assessing the benefits to the employee and the organisation. If a request is being made relating to an employee's disability, then it must be considered in line with the legal obligation under the Equality Act 2010 to make reasonable adjustments. This obligation is separate to the legal obligation to consider a request for flexible working. So if you think a request has been made because of a disability, you should discuss this with the employee sensitively and consider taking legal advice before any decision is made. Dealing with a request promptly is also covered as legislation sets out at the time frame that an employer must respond to a request within. An employer must fully deal with the request within 2 months. Acas provide training on getting flexible working requests right. This includes how to properly apply the legislation and the Acas Code. Links to courses available are included in your handout. So prior to the 6th of April 2024, employees needed 26 weeks of service to make a statutory request for flexible working. Now employees have a statutory right to make a flexible working request from day one of their employment. The request must be made in writing, and 2 statutory requests can be made within a 12-month period. Once an employer has received a written request, it must be reasonably considered in line with the legislation and the Acas Code. Good practice is to have a conversation with the employee to discuss their request in more detail. If the request isn't going to be accepted in full, the employer must first consult with the employee prior to rejecting the request. You might choose to allow the employee to be accompanied at this conversation, but this is not a legal requirement unless it is a reasonable adjustment. If the request cannot be accepted, you should consider and discuss with the employee any other options there may be. For example, if an employee requested to work from home permanently, could hybrid working be an option? Only turn down the request if there's a valid business reason. By law, a request cannot be turned down. By law, a request can only be turned down for 1 or more of 8 business reasons. A list of these can be found on the Acas website. Some of these reasons include the impact of additional costs, that there will be a negative impact on quality of work, or a negative effect on the business's ability to meet customer demands. You should allow the employee to appeal the outcome if they disagree. If an appeal meeting is offered, it must be carried out, including an outcome within the 2-month timescale. Although it is not a legal requirement, allowing an appeal could prevent a case being taken further to an employment tribunal. So I'm going to hand you over to Kieran just now to explore a case study on flexible working. Over to you, Kieran.
Thanks, Vicky. In this case, we're going to be looking at an example of an employee requesting flexible working and the potential outcomes if the employer refuses or accepts. Liam's worked full-time for 15 years. His father has recently come to live with Liam, and he's finding it increasingly difficult to look after his father and work full-time. Liam would like to reduce his hours and work remotely on some days. Liam recalls a colleague doing something similar when she returned from maternity leave, so he submits a statutory flexible working request in writing. So what happens next? Let's take a look at what might happen if the employer decides to refuse Liam's request. Liam may seek employment elsewhere. This will mean the organisation loses an experienced long-term member of staff and incurs costs in recruiting and training Liam's replacement. Liam may be able to bring a claim of discrimination at an employment tribunal. If the women in the organisation have had their flexible working requests approved, and Liam believes his has been rejected because he is male, this could be sex discrimination. If Liam's employer does not grant his request, Liam could continue to struggle, his work may be negatively impacted, and he could end up taking time off sick due to the impact on his well-being. It is important to note that by refusing a request without proper consideration, giving reasons that are not permitted by law, or coming to a decision based on incorrect facts or outside the prescribed time frame, an employee may bring a tribunal complaint. This could result in an award of 8 weeks' pay, and the employer could be ordered to reconsider the application. But what if the employer was to grant Liam's request? Flexible working hours can help reduce absenteeism and turnover rates. If Liam can manage his work and personal responsibilities more effectively by working flexibly, he is less likely to need time off or to leave his job. Flexible working hours can help boost productivity by allowing employees to work during their most productive hours. This may mean Liam can work earlier or later in the day, or from a different location altogether. As a result, he may be able to complete tasks more efficiently and effectively. Liam has more control over his schedule, so he may feel more valued and respected, which can lead to better communication, collaboration, and overall job satisfaction. I'll now hand you back over to our presenter, so back to you, Vicky.
Thanks, Kieran. So we're now going to look at the Flexible Working Amendment Regulations 2023. So a recent survey by Acas has found that 7 out of 10 employees are not aware that they will have a statutory right to request flexible working from day one of their job on or after the 6th of April. Employees can make a statutory request for flexible working from day one. The law does not affect the right to make a non-statutory request during a recruitment process or offer negotiations. 2 flexible working requests can be made in a rolling 12-month period rather than the previous 1 per 12 months. It's important to be aware that there can only be 1 live request at any one time. Employees are not required to set out how the effects of their flexible working request might be dealt with by the employer. However, giving this information can be useful when considering alternatives through consultation. Employers are legally required to consult with their staff before making a decision unless the request is being accepted in full. The outcome of a flexible working request, including appeal stages, must be given within 2 months of receiving the request. It is important to note that the Act does not create an automatic right to work flexibly. The right remains one of being able to request to work flexibly. The fundamental principle of flexible working remains that working flexibly means making a change to a person's working hours, location, or pattern. All requests must be considered in a reasonable manner, and remember, to reject someone's statutory flexible working request, an employer must have 1 or more of the 8 business reasons outlined in the regulations. To adhere to flexible working legislation and the Acas Code of Practice, employers should review existing policies and procedures and consider where changes are needed to adhere to the new regulations, taking account of the new Acas Code of Practice and guidance. Train and upskill your managers on the importance of flexible working arrangements, how to effectively evaluate requests, and how to manage teams with diverse schedules. Provide clarity for all staff and create open channels of communication to ensure employees understand their right to request flexible working. And finally, with regards to our initial question at the beginning of the presentation, according to a 2023 survey by CIPD, what percentage of workers view a flexible working pattern as important when considering a new role? And the answer is 90%. 9 out of 10 of the working population are looking to work flexibly in some form and factor it in when considering a new role. The change in legislation may encourage your staff to make requests, so be prepared for a potential influx of flexible working requests and consider how you will manage this. Remember, Acas have training on flexible working, what's changed and how to handle requests. CIPD is partnering with the charity Working Families and the UK Government's Flexible Working Task Force to relaunch the Happy to Talk Flexible Working campaign, helping employers to understand the benefits of flexible working from the point of recruitment. The campaign encourages employers to advertise jobs as flexible, by using the Happy to Talk flexible working strapline and logo in their job advertisements. So we have now stopped answering your questions, and please do not post any further questions. So today we have been talking about flexible working requests. If you would like to know more about this topic, then Acas has a number of free resources that you may find useful. For example, we have advice pages on Acas guidance about flexible working, Acas revised Code of Practice on requests for flexible working. Our free webinars run regularly, where we also make past webinar recordings available so that you can watch them at a convenient time. All links are included in today's handout, along with other useful resources, and we'll talk you through how to download this at the end. Our free online advice and guidance is updated regularly. We also have a regular free newsletter to help keep you up to date with new guidance, employment-related news, and scheduled training events. If you would like to leave us a review, we've also included a link to Trustpilot where you can share your feedback on today's event. Acas offers a variety of support and training options to suit your business needs and equip you with more in-depth knowledge. Our digital courses are delivered to you using Zoom and will give you the opportunity to interact with our knowledgeable trainers and explore some of the challenges you may be facing. We also offer face-to-face training at various locations around the country, and courses are available for you to book now. We have a wide range of training products to choose from. For example, if you've enjoyed today's webinar, you may be also interested in the following courses: flexible working, contracts of employment, recruitment and retention. We have lots of options to support you, from dealing with workplace problems to developing skills and keeping you up to date with good practice, whichever delivery method you prefer. Acas can also work with you to provide tailored support for your workplace. Our wide range of training can be delivered in-house for you, either in person or via digital platforms. And we can work with you to diagnose workplace problems and explore practical solutions. If this is something you may be interested in, call our customer services team on 0300 123 1150 or find more information in your handout. So just to summarise today, flexible working is a continuously growing trend, with an increasing number of individuals in the UK embracing work arrangements that offer flexibility. It is important to understand and apply the legislation correctly, as well as following good practice guidance set out in the Acas Code. This webinar has covered an overview of flexible working, the Acas Code of Practice, a case study, and flexible working amendment regulations. And finally, we showed you how to access further free Acas resources, find more detailed training courses, and outline some options for tailored support for your business. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to hand you back over to Kieran.
I just want to say a final thank you from the Acas Webinar team before we conclude, and I've put a few key reminders on screen for you. And finally, a reminder of the link to the Acas free newsletter to help keep you up to date if you've not already subscribed. Thanks for watching.